All right, welcome back. Today we are going over letter 36. This is Seneca's letter to Lucilius on the value of retirement. We're going to revisit that theme of retirement again, that the one that Seneca is so. Let's go to the dark reader. I keep on forgetting that. This is better for you guys, right? Let me know. You guys like the dark reader better? I'm pretty sure that's the case. But so many things to remember. Changing the lights, changing everything here. But let's jump into it. All right. He says, encourage your friends to despise stout-heartedly those who upbraid him, because he has sought the shade of retirement and has abdicated his career of honors, and, though he might have attained more, has preferred tranquility to them all. Okay. Let him prove daily to these detractors how wisely he has looked out for his own interests. Those whom men envy will continue to march past him. Some will be pushed out of the ranks, and others will fall. Prosperity is a turbulent thing. It torments itself. It stirs the brain in more ways than one, goading men onto various aims, some to power and others to high living. But it puffs up. Some it puffs up, others it slackens and wholly enervates. So what he's saying here is he's saying, look, okay, encourage your friend to not worry about these people who get upset or who like throw shade, okay, at him because he has sought retirement, right? And that he's gotten out of the rat race. He doesn't want to pursue his career anymore, and even though he could have attained more, he preferred tranquility. He preferred to just be at peace. Okay, and he's saying there, look, daily he's going to prove this. Let him prove this to these people about how he's wisely looked after his own interests instead of worrying about other people's interests, right? And he says those whom men envy will continue to march past him. So the guys that people actually envy, they'll march past him, but some is going to be pushed out of the ranks and others will fall. He's saying prosperity is a turbulent thing. Okay, it torments itself. So guys are going to go for, some people want power, some people want money, some people want all these things. It puffs up people, it slackens people, it's this ball of stress. It's you're chasing this stuff because it is so fickle, right? So he's saying that, look, this guy who's retired, he's got it figured out. He doesn't need all this stuff, right? Again, we talk about Stoic philosophy. We talk about the nature, like what does nature require? Food, water, simple clothing, simple stuff, right? When you want all this other stuff, you're creating drama, you're creating turmoil in your life. And he's saying, so this guy's smart because he's looking after his own interests. All right, so in verse 2, he says here, but the retort comes, so-and-so carries his prosperity well. Yes, just as he carries his liquor. So you need not let this class of men persuade you that one who is besieged by the crowd is happy. They run to him as crowds rush for a pool of water, rendering it muddy while they drain it. Okay, so let's just break that verse down, or that part of the verse. So the counter argument, he says, is that this person carries his prosperity well. So yeah, this person, they're still in the rat race. They're still like doing things and achieving things. They don't do retirement, and they're fine. And he's saying, yeah, just as he carries his liquor, okay, that's fine. Right? Some people can handle their liquor. That's fine. So then what he's saying is, so you need not let this class of men, right, the one who carries prosperity well, persuade you that one who is besieged by the crowd is happy. So yeah, so if some people can handle this and they're good, then don't let them persuade you that this is for everybody. That someone who is besieged by the crowd, someone who is who is being influenced by the crowd, that they're happy. Okay, he says they run to him as crowds rush for a pool of water, right? So they run to these people who are handling their prosperity well, okay, rendering it muddy while they drain it, right? So actually, sorry, the crowds run to a person who's besieged by the crowd, right? As this crowd runs towards a pool of water, and they make it muddy while they drain it, okay? So they're destroying the person, right? And he says here, but you say, men call our friend a trifler and a sluggard. There are men, whose speech is awry, who use the contrary terms. They call him happy What of it? Was he happy? So again, he's talking about this person who's seeking out retirement, and he's saying that people call him a lazy bastard, right? Okay. There are men, he says, whose speech is awry, right? So they're not speaking right. They're using contrary terms. They called him happy. What of it? Was he happy? Was this guy actually happy when he was in the rat race? I don't think so, right? That's what he's saying. It's like they said, oh, he was happy before. No, I don't think so. Was he? Right? Are you happy in the rat race? I don't know. In verse 3, he says, even the fact that to certain persons he seems a man of very rough and gloomy cast of mind does not trouble me. Okay, so he's saying here, like, even though that he seems like this kind of downward guy that's not super happy, it's fine. Okay, he says Aristo used to say that he preferred a youth of stern disposition to one who was a jolly fellow and agreeable to the crowd. For, he added, wine which, when new, seemed harsh and sour becomes good wine, but that which tasted well at the vintage cannot stand age. So let them call him stern and a foe to his own advancement. It is just a sternness that will go well when it is aged, provided only that he continues to cherish virtue and to absorb thoroughly the studies which make for culture, not those with which it is sufficient for a man to sprinkle himself, but those in which the mind should be steeped. Okay, so what he's saying here is he's saying, look, so this guy, they're saying he's not super jolly. He's not like a super happy guy. And he's saying, okay, well, Aristo, he said this of youth that were of the same disposition of, that they're stern, that they're serious. Okay. They're not jovial, right? He's not super jolly and agreeable to the crowd. He says, if you have wine that it seems harsh and sour, it becomes good wine as it ages, right? Because that's typically the nature of it. Where if you have some wine that it tastes good when it's brand new, it probably is not going to age too well. Right. And so he's saying that it's like that with people. Someone who is too happy and too just going along with people and whatever, too agreeable, they're probably going to be influenced by the crowd. They're going to be trying to make people happy. Whereas someone who's got more of a stern disposition, who's a little bit more not as easily influenced, they are going to advance better as they study, as they learn, as long as they're studying the right thing. He says, you have to be studying the right thing, but as long as you're doing that, then that is actually probably a better person. He says, verse 4, now is a time to learn. What? Is there any time when a man should not learn? By no means. But just as it is credible for every age to study, so it is not credible for every age to be instructed. So he's saying, okay, there's some times when you shouldn't be instructed. Okay, so what is it? He says, an old man learning his ABC is a disgraceful and absurd object. The young man must store up, the old man must use. You will therefore be doing a thing most helpful to yourself if you make this friend of yours as good a man as possible. Those kindnesses, they tell us, are to be both sought and for and bestowed, which benefit the giver no less than the receiver. They are unquestionably the best kind. So he's saying, look, there's a time, like you should learn all the time, for sure, okay? But now's the time when it's most critical, right? And he's saying, yeah, you're going to continue to learn, but it's what you're learning, right? An old man trying to learn his ABCs, that's disgraceful. It doesn't make sense. He's saying that as a young man, you have to store up all this knowledge, and the old man, you have to use it. You put it into practice. You teach it to other people. Okay? So he's saying that you're going to do a thing that's helpful to yourself if you make this friend of yours as good a man as possible. Okay? If you do that, he's saying that those kindnesses, okay, they're both the kind that you should seek after. Like you should want someone to help you, but you should also bestow. And he says, they benefit the giver no less than the receiver. So you giving this knowledge or helping someone in this way, it actually benefits you as well, right? In verse 5, he says, finally, he has no longer any freedom in the matter. He has pledged his word, and it is less disgraceful to compound with a creditor than to compound with a promising future. To pay his debt of money, the businessman must have a prosperous voyage. The farmer must have fruitful fields and kindly weather. But the debt which your friend owes can be completely paid by mere goodwill. So what he's saying here is he's saying, look, he doesn't even have a choice at this point. He's given his word. He said, this is what I'm going to do. And he's saying it's less disgraceful to compound with a creditor. Okay, it's less disgraceful to compound with a creditor than to compound with a promising future. So what does he mean by this? What does he mean by to compound with a creditor? This I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure, but I think we can figure this out. It is less disgraceful to compound with a creditor than to compound with a promising future. So he's saying that if we go a little bit further, to pay his debt of money, the businessman must have a prosperous voyage, right? So he's saying that there's this debt. He's given his word. He has this debt, okay, that he's created. And so to pay the creditor, to pay this debt is less disgraceful than to pay into a promising future. Right? He's saying, let's just have him pay the debt. And here's the thing about it. It's like, if you're a businessman, you have to succeed. You have to, or a farmer, you have to grow fruits. You have to, it takes a lot to fulfill this debt. But he's saying that this debt that this friend owes, this promise of retirement, this, what he's promised and put his word into, it can be paid by just goodwill, just by choosing to go down this path. It doesn't require anything, but just the goodwill of it. He says, fortune has no jurisdiction over character. This is a good one. Fortune has no jurisdiction over character, right? No one can make you anything. You choose character. Fortune can make you rich or poor, but it has nothing to do with your character. Let him so regulate his character that in perfect peace he may bring to perfection that spirit within him which feels neither loss nor gain, but remains in the same attitude no matter how things fall out. A spirit like this, if it is heaped with worldly goods, rises superior to its wealth. If, on the other hand, chance has stripped him of part of his wealth, or even all of it, is not impaired. So what he's saying here, right, and this is really applicable to us, is, again, fortune has no jurisdiction over character, right? So let him regulate his character. We should regulate our character in such a way, in such perfect peace, that you don't even feel loss or gain, right? So that you have the same attitude, okay, no matter what happens. So if you're like this, then if you get a bunch of fortune, if you're heaped with worldly goods, you gain a lot of money, that your spirit rises superior to its wealth. So it's above that. It doesn't change. That wealth doesn't add anything to it. The spirit, who you are, is above that already. And if you lose part of your wealth, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your character in any way. It does not impair you. In verse 7, he says, if your friend had been born in Parthia, he would have begun when a child to bend the bow. Okay, so he would have been an archer. If in Germany, he would forthwith have been brandishing the slender spear. Okay, his slender spear. This is, in Germany, the weapon of choice. If he had been born in the days of our forefathers, he would have learned to ride a horse and smite his enemy hand to hand. Okay, so that's what they did back then. These are the occupations which the system of each race recommends to the individual. Yes, prescribes for him. So, okay, we're building up to something. I think this is all makes sense, right? So then he says, to what then shall this friend of yours devote his attention? Okay, so if he were born in these different conditions, he would have had these different things he would have, but what should he focus on? I say, let him learn that which is helpful against all weapons, against every kind of foe, contempt of death, because no one doubts that death has in it something that inspires terror, so that it shocks even our souls, which nature has so molded that they love their own existence. Okay, so he's saying, back in the day, depending on where he was at, he would have learned to fight with a bow, or he would have learned to use a spear, or he would have learned to ride on horseback and fight with his fists. Okay, so what weapon should he have, right? How about the one that protects you against everything? the contempt of death, not fearing death, being ready for death, right? And he says that this is the most important one, right? Because that's the thing that really inspires terror, that shocks even your souls, okay? And that you love your existence. They love their own existence, right? So he says here, they love their own existence. Otherwise, there would be no need to prepare ourselves and to whet our courage to face that towards which we should move with a sort of voluntary instinct, precisely as all men tend to preserve their existence, right? So again, this is one of the hardest teachings of Stoic philosophy, is this idea that you should welcome death. It's, as I say it, it's difficult for me to say it, right? It's like, nobody wants to die, but you shouldn't be afraid of it either, right? And the thing is, if you're preparing yourself, if you are making it so that you're living as nature intended, if you're not, if you're building your character such a way that you don't have desires that rule you, right? That you're content, then you can feel like you've lived a full and happy life. That you can find that happiness, and then you don't necessarily fear death as much because you have completed the things that you've set out to do, right? Like you're not seeking, trying to get more things, need more time because you need more things, right? You're fulfilled. No man learns a thing in order that, if necessity arises, he may lie down with composure upon a bed of roses. But he steels his courage to this end, that he may not surrender his plighted faith to torture, and that, if need be, he may someday stay out his watch in the trenches, even though wounded, without ever even leaning on his spear, because sleep is likely to creep over men who support themselves by any prop whatsoever. Okay, what does he mean here? What's going on here? All right, some of this is in the context of the time, but we'll try to dissect as much as we can. So he's saying that you don't learn a thing, all right, so that when it's time to use it, you just lay down and die, right? He says, but instead he gets his courage ready for this end, so that he can either, so that he doesn't just surrender to torture, okay? And that if he needs to, he may someday stay out his watch in the trenches, okay? And so even though he's wounded, he's going to fight to the end without ever leaning on a spear. I think that means to just kill yourself, right? I probably shouldn't have said that word on YouTube, but without, doing that, okay? And he says, because sleep is likely to creep over men who support themselves by any prop whatsoever, right? So let's move on here. Okay, so he says, in death there is nothing harmful, for there must exist something to which it is harmful. So if you die, all right, then you can't really be harmed because there has to be some object to be harmed, which you don't exist anymore. I know that's not that consoling, but meditate on it. What can I say? It's hard. This is a hard teaching. In verse 10, he says, and yet, if you are possessed by so great a craving for a longer life, reflect that none of the objects which vanish from our gaze and are reabsorbed into the world of things from which they have come forth and are soon to come forth again is annihilated. They merely end their course and do not perish. And death, which we fear and shrink from, merely interrupts life, but does not steal it away. The time will return when we shall be restored to the light of day, and many men would object to this were they not brought back in forgetfulness of the past. So it's not the best reassurance either. But what he is saying here is he's saying, like, when you die, the matter that you have, it doesn't go away. It's not annihilated. It goes back into the earth and then eventually becomes life again, right? Like another living thing comes from that thing. And so, so take some respite in that. Like, don't be so upset because, hey, it's just a course of things. It doesn't, there is no real death. Like nothing is destroyed. It just interrupts life, right? There's just a period of time. It doesn't actually take it away. And sometime you'll be restored back to the light of day. Like your molecules, your atoms will be back, right? And he's saying that many men object to this, were they not brought back in forgetfulness of the past. So the problem is that you won't remember it, right? You won't remember your life. So, like I said, I mean, it really depends on what your views on this are, right? Is there, it brings up the important questions like what happens after you die? Is there some other world or some other existence? Is there heaven or hell? Is there, what are these things? And we don't know, right? And I think that's probably the scary part of it. But, he's saying that, look, you can at least say that you're not, like, the molecules aren't annihilated. Like, if you is more than your atoms, then, even if it isn't, then at least those atoms, like those, what makes you up will come back someday. So again, like I said, it's not that consoling. I'll admit that, right? So he says in verse 11, "But I mean to show you later, with more care, that everything which seems to perish merely changes. Since you're destined to return, you ought to depart with a tranquil mind." So again, now at this point, there's a little bit more reassurance here. So what does Seneca really believe about this? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, does he believe that, that the soul persists and that you just merely change form? Perhaps, because he is saying, I mean to show you later with more care that everything which seems to perish merely changes. Since you're destined to return, you ought to depart with a tranquil mind. Now, see, I think this makes things easier, right? In fact, without going too far off course, there's been a lot of studies done on psychedelic kind of experiences where people have near-death type of experiences on various substances. And there's actually a lot of people completely lost their fear of death. They did this on terminally ill patients that were scared to die, of cancer patients. And they had them go on a very deep psychedelic trip with some mushrooms or DMT. And they found that these people lost their fear of death. And part of the reason why is because there's this sort of ego death. And I mean, there's some speculation as to whether what they saw was the real reality and that they got this, basically what happened within them is they realized that there was more outside themselves. And to a large degree, a lot of them now had this peace of mind that the soul carries on, that there is more from this after this life. And when you know that, then it's easy to do what he says, right? If you had a knowledge of an otherworldly existence and you knew this was not the end, then, you could depart with a tranquil mind, right? A lot of the stuff wouldn't matter so much, right? But it's just that it's so high stakes. That's what makes it scary. "Mark how the round of the universe repeats its course. You will see that no star in our firmament is extinguished, but that they all set and rise in alternation. Summer has gone, but another year will bring it again. Winter lies low, but it will be restored by its own proper months. The night has overwhelmed the sun, but the day will soon rout the night again. The wandering stars retrace their former courses. A part of the sky is rising unceasingly, and part is sinking." So he's saying that everything has its course. It comes and it goes, and so it is with you. That's kind of the to make peace of this. So in verse 12, he says, "One more word, and then I shall stop. Infants and boys and those who have gone mad have no fear of death. And it is most shameful if reason cannot afford us that peace of mind to which they have been brought by their folly. Farewell." So he's saying here, his last argument is, look, infants, right? Little children, people who have gone mad, they don't fear death. And so it's kind of sad if it's wrong if people who are like mad or don't understand things can have this ability to not fear death, and we can't reason it out. We can't, through our reasoning, also arrive at this lack of fear of death. So there you go. Yeah, I know some of these things are hard, but this is why we read this. We meditate on these things, and my own personal view in terms of Stoic philosophy here is that there's a lot. I mean, obviously, like, don't get absorbed so much on this death part of it, so that you miss the other stuff, because there's so much more in Stoic philosophy than just this focus. Even though this is a big thing for Seneca, and I think a big thing, in life to be able to conquer this fear, or even to like just understand the brevity of life or the shortness of life. Seneca wrote his book, The Shortness of Life, and realize that you don't have all that time, right? And that you do have to hurry towards this course because you don't know what's coming next. And because of that, you should make the most of things. And that's why it's important to have a tranquil mind. Like you don't want to be in constant torture and turmoil, and Stoicism will save you from that state. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you tomorrow.